Late one morning, under the luminous arches of the Galactic Council's primary hall, a deep and panicked hush seized every delegate present. Rows of elongated chairs curved around a platform that hovered on a thin plane of anti-gravity. The room's design glowed with a gold-blue sheen, reminiscent of ages-old architecture that had been polished and revered. But now, tension replaced the usual ceremonial calm. High Chairperson Norv, an imposing figure with a thrice-segmented thorax and an official robe studded in star-shaped brooches, stood at the center of the platform. Beneath the transparent flooring, entire galaxies shimmered, and the distant hum of cosmic winds underscored the gravity of the situation. A single clarion note signaled the start of an emergency session. A subtle dread pinched the hearts, or equivalent organs, of every alien assembled. No one spoke at first, and the quiet grew heavier. Then Norv cleared his throat, a sound like a small avalanche of pebbles, and declared that recent developments on the planet Earth demanded immediate address. The phrase contained the human, flashed on the overhead display. It flickered in a bold script that rarely appeared, reserved for matters labeled crisis or catastrophic. Norv reminded everyone that the Council normally ignored any species beneath Level 7 consciousness. Usually, these so-called primitives were busy worshipping odd-shaped vegetables, discovering rudimentary tools, or in one bizarre case, marrying their own furniture. But the humans had taken a perplexing leap. They catapulted themselves from poking things with sticks to launching nuclear devices for the sheer thrill of it, all within an incomprehensibly short span. And if that was not enough, humans had begun broadcasting their own anomalies for entertainment. It defied universal logic. Glubnarth, the representative from the Floran Confederacy, was the first to speak. His gelatinous limb thumped on a marble console, sending a faint rippling echo. He insisted that humans posed a threat. Their penchant for explosive curiosity and endless comedic reaction to tragedy suggested the possibility of some advanced psychological warfare. No species, Glubnarth growled, voice fizzing with frustration, could be so reckless without harboring a hidden plan. Ambassador Veb of the Bortlak Nebula, who resembled an elegant swirl of feathers atop a floating orb, countered that humans had yet to show any open hostility. They simply acted in bizarre, uncontrolled ways. They had discovered nuclear technology, yes, but their next big public endeavor was filming each other falling off bicycles, giving it 5-star ratings on a platform called the Internet. Still, the Council worried. At the back of the assembly, Merrick's the Unmoved, renowned for speaking only in times of true catastrophe, remained silent. His golden eyes tracked the debate with the calm detachment of someone who suspected matters were about to escalate. Everyone remembered the moment humanity pierced the veil. For centuries, Earth had appeared harmless from afar, though their radio signals were questionable. Then, within 5,000 short years, they leapt from flame-wielding primitives to spacefaring maniacs. The final straw was the story of "let's nuke the moon just to see what happens." Then followed the triumphant shriek of 21st-century humans who managed to land probes across their solar system while live broadcasting to an internet audience that found it hilarious to paste cartoon mustaches on the craft's digital model. The assembly bristled at the memory. Most advanced species took millennia of meditative reflection before venturing into orbit. Yet here were these loud, ironically witty creatures forging ahead, seemingly guided by caffeine and curiosity alone. Norg's repeated words, "We must do something," roamed in everyone's mind, though no one knew exactly what that should be. Meanwhile, the humans themselves were on Earth, entirely oblivious to the formalities being readied against them. Derek was humming along to an improvised tune in his tiny workshop that overlooked a neon-splattered city. From the window, he could see advertisements lighting up the sky, some of them speculating the existence of cute UFOs overhead. Derek, in his mid-30s, wore a half-grin most of the time, especially when he broadcast his daily stream, Space Spotting with Derek. He had a knack for picking up weird signals. One day, he intercepted something peculiar, a faint hush of static that seemed intentionally masked. With the help of a half-broken piece of software he'd cobbled together from open-source codes, he decoded a worrisome message that read stealth approach to Earth. Do not let humans see. Instead of sounding the alarm or panicking, Derek launched a public broadcast. The chatter about secret alien watchers went viral. Millions tuned in. Some demanded government transparency, while others posted memes involving cartoon tacos and statements like, "Probe by noon, ice cream by night." Baina, a self-proclaimed gastronomic inventor, found it all delightful. She specialized in bizarre fusion foods, sweet salty, savory chili chocolate, grilled cheese stuffed with pickles and jam. Whenever a trending phenomenon erupted, she contributed by showcasing ET-themed recipes. The headline soared, Baina's Interstellar Nachos. She believed wholeheartedly that the best way to greet any cosmic traveler was by offering them a plate of something both delicious and questionably unnatural in color. That night, she tested a neon orange dipping sauce under blacklight conditions, proudly branding it Space Dorito Lava. She shared an apartment with Uncle Rolf, who was not her real uncle but had shown up at her doorstep months prior with a random collection of instruments, kazoos, xylophones, a contraption made of strings and spoons. Rolf's abiding philosophy was that any conflict in the universe could be defused by the right combination of comedic timing and comforting background music. While the Earth side of things buzzed with excitement, the Galactic Council was making more concerted moves. The Yulari observers, famed for their ability to remain utterly unseen, prepared to land. Their craft was painted in anti-notice pigments that supposedly bent light. The hull was coated with a technology labeled, "Please ignore me." A specialized infiltration crew volunteered to gather first-hand intel. They touched Earth's upper atmosphere in the silent hush of dawn. Within 3 minutes, one of Derek's radio telescopes picked them up. Exactly 30 seconds later, a chat feed on a popular streaming site displayed a live feed from a random user named Denny. He zoomed in on the flickering shimmer of the Yulari craft, titled the broadcast Spicy Space Dorito, and watchers soared to 1 million within minutes. The Yulari crew, reading their cloaking sensors, realized they'd been discovered with humiliating ease. They retreated in a panic, half convinced they faced cosmic-level telepaths. 2 had to be sedated. 1 requested immediate transfer to a floating monastery in the Polthral system. The fiasco sent shockwaves back to the Council, fueling dire new theories that humans had advanced detection networks, or, worse, were engaging in a cunning form of misdirection. Beneath the hull's shimmering dome, Ambassador Vebb attempted to calm the assembly. "They're not launching warheads at us. They appear to be celebrating our presence." Glubnartha's gelatinous mass quivered with indignation. Celebrating? They humiliated the Yulari. They plastered images of the stealth craft on something they call the internet. Their entire species has seen us. Another hush spread. Typically, in such interstellar contact scenarios, the uninitiated species collapsed in fear, worship, or both. Humans instead laughed and broadcast it, gaining sponsors in the process. The Council found itself ill-prepared for such a response. Merrick's cleared his throat, producing a resonant click. Even that small motion turned heads. "We should not assume they are naive," he murmured. "They might simply choose to interpret everything as entertainment. Perhaps that includes us." While some demanded immediate quarantine of Earth, others proposed official diplomatic contact, albeit carefully orchestrated. A contingent insisted on severing all lines of communication and leaving humans to their chaotic fate. Yet the more intelligence they gathered, the stranger Earth seemed. Several data analysts collapsed from confusion after sifting through thousands of cat memes, slapstick videos, and endless arguments about pineapple on pizza. The Council had rarely faced a puzzle they could not at least categorize, but these humans refused neat compartments. By the end of the second emergency session, the delegates cobbled together a blueprint for high-level negotiations. They scheduled it on a neutral assembly moon and locked it behind various interstellar channels. No official invitation was sent to Earth, but at some point, the Council's public event calendar found its way onto a domain Derek's hacking tools could access. With typical Earth gusto, humans promptly clicked attend and left a comment. Can we bring extra chairs and meat? The discovery that Earth had effectively RSVP'd to a top-secret summit triggered another wave of confusion. Ambassador Webb exclaimed, They just joined? Norb's thorax rumbled. Yes, they found the listing. They're bringing something called a cooler and a grill. When the final date approached, the council soared to a new level of anxiety. Delegates from 60 different species arrived on the designated assembly moon, each with meticulously prepared statements, formal robes, and centuries-old ceremonial guidelines. News spread that humans had also launched a vessel, but the shape of that vessel defied every known starship aesthetic. It looked more like an upside-down cereal bowl, painted with swirling patterns that changed color under direct starlight. Some council representatives tried to interpret the swirl as a code, only to realize it spelled out nonsense phrases like, "We come in pieces," and "We brought snacks." When the craft docked, a pulsing melody broadcast from its hull. This sound had a cowbell track that repeated every few seconds, impossible to ignore. A few delegates from the Xenivian cluster, reputed to abhor irregular rhythms, felt an involuntary urge to sway their tentacles. Derek, Baina, and Uncle Rolf emerged, the three of them dressed in T-shirts brandishing cartoon icons of an avocado wearing sunglasses. At Derek's side was a portable grill folded neatly into a metallic suitcase. Baina carried multiple plastic containers stacked precariously high, each full of neon-hued sauces. Uncle Rolf had a foldable chair slung over one shoulder and a plastic flamingo perched on the other. A hush fell as security details scurried to intercept them, but the humans merely beamed wide smiles, calling, "Hello, friends." The assembly parted in near disbelief. The official in charge of protocol cleared his throat, wearing an expression that said, "This is not how it's supposed to go." They asked the humans if they had weapons or contraband, to which Derek responded by pulling out a spatula. "Is this contraband? It's for flipping burgers." Within moments, a minor meltdown ensued. Humans spread out a pop-up picnic area near the towering spire that was meant to be the central stage of the summit. They arranged foldable chairs in rows, erected a portable table upon which Baina began setting jars labeled, "Not poison, probably." The label alone made half the security detail flinch. The other half found themselves drawn to the weird, mouth-watering aromas drifting from those jars. Meanwhile, Uncle Rolf fiddled with a device that blasted an upbeat tune. Some delegates plugged their ears, but found themselves unconsciously tapping their feet, or pseudopods. A collective murmur fluttered around the dais. "They are contaminating the entire summit with a party," Glubnarth moaned. Ambassador Webb, torn between horror and curiosity, watched as a few of his fellow Bortlack Nebula officials lost their composure upon sampling some bright orange sauce. Their eyes went wide, tears of either pain or delight glistening. Then they began praising the flavor. Chaos escalated when Uncle Rolf began offering free back rubs in the name of cross-species understanding. He claimed, "Massage is universal," gently kneading the air above a gaseous life form who vibrated in confusion. In less than half an hour, half the council had drifted closer to the human picnic, drawn by music, smells, or unexplainable curiosity. Glubnarth tried to remind everyone that this was supposed to be the most dignified event in centuries. An official from the Morven sector was about to address the assembly regarding potential alliances. Instead, he paused to try something called a space dog, then made a gurgling sound that signified transcendent euphoria in his species. Glubnarth nearly fainted in frustration. Meanwhile, Nord demanded that order be restored, but the delegated enforcers had somehow started bobbing their heads in time to the infernal cowbell-laced track. Merrick's watched from a distance, silent, eyes reflecting the swirl of colors and improbable events unfolding. Throughout his life, he had witnessed planetary crises and cosmic anomalies, but never had he seen an entire sophisticated assembly yield so quickly to raw, unstructured mirth. He finally stepped forward, approaching Derek. Merrick's imposing height towered over the human, golden eyes scanning the scene. "You greet us with food?" he asked quietly. Derek gave a broad grin. "That's right. We weren't sure if any of you guys ate, but we figured it was a good way to say hi." Merrick's blinked. "This is the Galactic Summit, not a festival. Are you not afraid we might retaliate for your flamboyance?" Derek shrugged cheerfully. "If you do, at least we tried. And hey, maybe you'll like our cooking enough that you won't want to zap us." In many ways, that single exchange encapsulated the heart of humanity's approach. An unstoppable wave of comedic irreverence and kindness at once. The council had come prepared for declarations of territory or at least a formal trade negotiation. Instead, they faced easy smiles, clashing pop music, and the unshakable sense that humans were simply excited to be here. The old rituals, tapping the cosmic gavel, reciting universal oaths, delivering centuries-old genealogical titles, fell apart. Some delegates actually found themselves preferring this informal atmosphere after the initial shock. The Bortlak Nebula group started adjusting quickly, a few whistling along to the music. A swirl of clapping tentacles greeted Derek's demonstration of how to flip burgers without losing them to microgravity. A hush of curiosity circled Baina when she unveiled 7-layer quantum dip, which glowed in multiple colors. She explained that the dip might or might not rearrange an individual's sense of taste on a molecular level. Even so, several delegates dared to sample it, only to break out in unstoppable giggles. Glubnarth, near tears, demanded the assembly hold a vote to declare Earth a Class 4 menace right on the spot. But Ambassador Veb pointed out that no actual aggression had occurred. The humans had not threatened anyone. They were basically delivering comedic chaos. The debate reached a breaking point when a dignitary from the Ilari, once traumatized by the spicy space Dorito fiasco, confronted Derek, only to find himself offered a hot beverage called coffee. Warily, the Ilari official took a sip. Within moments, he felt an indescribable rush, as though entire galaxies danced behind his eyelids. "That's the caffeine," Derek explained, amused. The Ilari official's anxieties evaporated in a swirl of euphoria. He promptly insisted on bringing some coffee back for the rest of his delegation. The deeper truth set in. The humans had no plan. They had come without policy papers or strategic frameworks. The only document Dare produced was a scribbled napkin with a doodle of a dog, a smiley face, and an arrow pointing to a swirling star labeled Spicy Nebula Zone. When pressed for a statement of intent, Uncle Rolf strummed an impromptu jingle about exploring the cosmos with a plastic flamingo. The council was speechless. Now and then, Glubnarth tried to reassert protocol by calling for an official condemnation or requesting immediate reinstallation of strict regulations. He scolded the newly built snack station, but no one listened because a group of telepathic sponges had discovered the brilliance of jalapeno mustard, and they transmitted waves of delight to all empathic species present. As the hours passed, a subtle shift happened. The once solemn environment was replaced by an air of curiosity and subdued laughter. The unsaid question lingered. Are we truly under threat, or are we simply rethinking what a threat looks like? Norgv, thoroughly undone by the meltdown of tradition, convened a closed-door session with several key delegates, among them Merrick's, Veb, and the increasingly frantic Glubnarth. They tried to decide, should they forcibly expel the humans to restore dignity, or should they attempt to adapt? Glubnarth insisted that letting humans remain risked unraveling centuries of stable, predictable governance. Veb admitted, with a slightly embarrassed flutter of his feathers, that he found the human approach oddly refreshing. Merrick's listened, eyes half-lidded. Then, in a voice that resonated like a temple gong, he reminded them of an older, nearly forgotten principle. Predictive harmony was never about making every moment solemn. It was about fostering cooperation across unknown boundaries. Everyone went silent. We turned that principle into rigid rules, Merrick's continued. Maybe these humans are reminding us of the original meaning, to share, to unify, to discover the cosmos together. Glubnarth spluttered. "They're not unifying. They're messing around with inflatable furniture." But Merrick's words lingered. As the hush stretched, the group realized that the humans, in their unstoppable wave of friendly chaos, might have stumbled upon a deeper cosmic truth. Or maybe they were just unbelievably lucky. Either way, the standard blueprint for first contact, shock, awe, subjugation, or veneration, had not played out. Instead, entire species found themselves laughing for the first time in eons. A data analyst from the Zing Quadrant confessed to discovering new neural pathways in his own mind after being forced to process the avalanche of Earth memes. With no final consensus reached, Nord returned to the main hall, only to find an unprecedented sight. The advanced delegates who had once demanded solemn engagement were now in a circle, sharing culinary curiosities with the humans. A stoic species from the far rim was teaching Derek a meditative chant. Meanwhile, Derek taught them a comedic dance that involved wiggling one's hips in time to a brassy beat. The official translator sphere hovered, generating translations that spilled over with exclamations of delight. Nord practically dropped his staff in surprise. It was as though centuries of alien caution had melted in a single afternoon, replaced by a sense of reckless camaraderie. Even the air smelled different, like grilled something. A round of applause followed when Uncle Rolf managed to get an entire row of delegates to hold up flaming marshmallows. The sweetness of Earth's sugar proved oddly addictive, leading one highly advanced civilization to vow that they would investigate the possible matter-antimatter synergy in toasted confections. Meanwhile, Glubnarth was outside the circle, glaring at the spectacle. He cornered Veb, pointing a wobbly limb at the bizarre festival. "We will regret this day," he hissed. "Mark my words. They are subverting everything we stand for, turning us into jesters." Veb, mouth partially stuffed with a glowing s'more, could only shrug. "You may be right," he said through a swirl of sugary bliss. "But have you tasted this thing?" Before that day ended, many of the council delegates had formed smaller committees or subgroups, typically with the aim of establishing temporary amusements. By nightfall, if it could be called night, on a moon bathed in artificial star lamps, an impromptu carnival had formed around the humans' pop-up station. Derek's music device blasted a rotating playlist. Some songs featured thrashing guitars, others soared with digital rhythms. The entire variety mystified certain species who could only hear in a narrower frequency range. They discovered ear implants that allowed them to experience these new auditory patterns, leading to more excited squeals or growls. The next day, official business was supposed to resume, but the transformation of the environment was too stark to ignore. The scheduled speeches on trade routes were put on hold as delegates were still enthralled by the novelty of Earth's cuisine or Earth's comedic traditions. Glubnarth, in desperation, attempted to hold a more formal session in a sealed chamber, inviting only the most tradition-bound representatives. But a portion of them ended up inviting Uncle Rolf in. He ambled in with a homemade instrument and began to play an upbeat tune. It turned out half the delegates yearned for a reason to break from monotony. The jokes, the nonsense, the unbridled experimentation with new tastes. These proved irresistible to many who had spent centuries in subdued reflection and methodical progress. Back on Earth, the news exploded. 3 humans successfully crashed the Galactic summit. Overnight, Derek's channel soared to record views. The global reaction was largely positive, with people chanting, "If you can't impress them with logic, feed them burritos." Government leaders, half outraged at the breach of standard procedures, found themselves overshadowed by an enthusiastic public that wanted more cosmic visitors. Conspiracy theories abounded, but ironically, they no longer held that the aliens wanted to conquer Earth. Instead, the theories proposed the aliens might want to compete with Earth in a cosmic cooking showdown or harness human comedic energy as a fuel source. Everyone seemed to be having too much fun to muster real fear. Meanwhile, the Council's carefully designed hierarchy was unraveling by the hour. The reason was simple. No species had ever shown such an unabashed sense of humor at the universal scale. Not once did the humans attempt to belittle or threaten anyone. They only extended unrelenting invitations to hang out, share toast, or jam to this new beat. Some delegates confided that they found the entire situation suspiciously enchanting, as if the humans had discovered a form of strategic unpredictability that no one knew how to counter. Glubnarth prepared a pointed manifesto demanding a universal declaration that Earth must be quarantined at once. But as he worked on it, the background hum of human laughter filtered in. He caught glimpses of species that had long disliked each other, now exchanging comedic gestures learned from the humans. Something in the cosmic order had changed, and it seemed unstoppable. By the third day, the galaxy's normal patterns of courtesy had collapsed into a swirl of curiosity and delight. The Yalari, who had once fled in terror, were now learning how to replicate Earth coffee, foreseeing a new economy if they could distribute the beverage across star systems. The Morvan delegation wrote an impromptu poem about the transcendent unity of comedic chaos. Telepathic sponges broadcast waves of approving emotion whenever someone recounted a moment of comedic misadventure. And in the midst of it all, Uncle Rolf strummed out a brand new composition that combined half a dozen alien tonal systems with the jangle of Earth spoons. A hush fell as the weird melody rose, and each delegate sensed an indescribable synergy. For the first time, many glimpsed a vantage point from which the galaxy didn't revolve around fear or rigid order, but around the possibility of shared wonder, even if it was silly. Norgv, stunned but not powerless, tried one last measure, a formal hearing in which humanity would have to defend its unpredictable behavior. The humans were ushered into a smaller amphitheater with a ring of senior delegates, among them Glubnarth, Veb, and Merix. The atmosphere was tense, official record drones floating overhead. Glubnarth opened the hearing by accusing humans of undermining decorum and injecting comedic delirium into what was once a stable confederation. Derek rubbed the back of his neck. "We didn't mean to. We were just excited," he explained. "We're kind of always excited. The universe is huge and fascinating." Glubnarth hammered on. "That does not excuse your reckless disregard for protocol." Derek shrugged. "We've never been good with protocol, but we do have a surplus of hot sauce." A ripple of uncertain laughter spread across the amphitheater, promptly silenced by Glubnarth's glare. Merix sat in quiet observation, his eyes shifting from the humans to the other delegates. Finally, he asked, "And do you intend to lead us into chaos?" Uncle Rolf tapped his knee. "Chaos." He shook his head. "No, maybe a little unpredictability is good, though. Keeps us from getting too comfortable, you know?" Merix said nothing, but exhaled softly, as though some intangible barrier had cracked. Meanwhile, Bana beamed around the room, brandishing a small container labeled Extra Spicy Infinity Dip, offering it to anyone brave enough. Glubnarth tried to carry on with his cross-examination, but fewer and fewer delegates listened. They were either eyeing the container with curiosity or quietly acknowledging that for the first time in centuries, they felt more connected to each other. The hearing dissolved into an informal discussion about cosmic possibilities, comedic techniques, and potential trade routes involving Earth's bizarre condiments. That evening, as the assembly meandered into a sort of festival, Merix retrieved a dusty volume from an archival chamber. He had not opened this in eons. The text within spoke of predictive harmony, the founding doctrine that had established the Council's unity. His species had been the guardians of this wisdom for generations. As Merix read, he found a hidden footnote, a centuries-old note referencing that the original phrase might have been mistranslated. Instead of predictive harmony, the text might have meant cooperative discovery, implying a more open-ended approach to unknowns. This, he realized, was precisely the spirit the humans displayed. For so long, the Council had locked itself into ritual and fear of deviation. Now, the reckless laughter of these new arrivals forced them to re-examine their deepest assumptions. Merix felt an unexpected surge of gratitude, or as close as he ever came to that emotion. Perhaps, he thought, the humans were exactly what the galaxy needed, living proof that not everything had to be calm and tidy for progress to flourish. By day 5, no serious legislative measure could be passed. The entire summit had turned into an interstellar block party that spanned the conference moon's horizon. Delegates installed inflatable amusements. An entire corridor was dedicated to Earth's music, from classical piano to thrash metal, stirring equal parts fascination and confusion. The sentient moss from Ul explained that it never realized it possessed a sense of rhythm until it encountered a track called Funky Town. Meanwhile, the Chilean swarm replaced the usual menacing hum of their hive with an a cappella version of a pop hit from Earth. In short, every race was discovering new facets of themselves in ways that defied the Council's normal solemnity. Some species started calling it the Great Giggle Convergence, and rumors said future summits might incorporate these elements intentionally. The lines between seriousness and celebration blurred beyond repair. With each passing hour, Glubnarth grew more defeated, though some said they spotted him sampling that luminous infinity dip. Ambassador Veb launched a personal podcast, streaming from the central dais, in which he interviewed members of the Council about their experiences with Earth's comedic invasion. It quickly became the most-watched broadcast in the region, overshadowing even the official logs of the summit. "We will adapt," Veb said into the microphone, feathers shimmering, "or we will keep dancing. Either way, the galaxy is never going to be the same." Derek, somewhat overwhelmed by the success of the entire fiasco, found himself politely teaching advanced starfaring civilizations how to operate a grill. The Bortlak Nebula delegates demanded to know the secret behind searing a perfect hamburger patty. In exchange, they offered Derek a glimpse at their star maps. He was awed at the swirling tapestry of unknown systems. In that sense, genuine cultural exchange was unfolding, ironically overshadowed by the comedic veneer. The final twist arrived late in the evening, when the Council normally would have delivered a resolution. Everyone gathered at the main hall. Instead of reactivating the anti-gravity platform for a formal pronouncement, Norg stood in front of a picnic table, the same one where humans had first unpacked their flamboyant containers. He cleared his throat. The silence grew thick. Glubnarth loomed behind him, arms folded in disapproval. Veb lingered to one side, looking exhausted yet strangely hopeful. Merrick's stood motionless, observing. A few delegates, nibbling on Earth treats, tried not to break into giggles. In a solemn tone, Norg declared the Council recognized that Earth's approach was far from typical. Then he set down his staff on the table with a resigned sigh and announced that no quarantine or condemnation would be enacted. Instead, the Council concluded that Earth should be free to participate in galactic dialogues, provided they respect any local protocols that do not hamper harmless fun. A ripple of applause echoed. Some delegates wept with relief. Others let out whoops of joy, shocking themselves with how natural that felt. Derek, Baina, and Uncle Rolf exchanged high fives. They offered Norg a place by the grill, which he declined at first. But the faint hint of a grin flickered on his normally rigid face. When the news spread beyond the summit, entire star systems that had never once considered casual social gatherings began staging mini-festivals. Reports came in from remote planets. Inhabitants were wearing T-shirts with slogans like, "I survived the Galactic Council and got a salsa recipe." The Yalari overcame their initial shame and started a trade route for coffee beans, seeking to distribute it as an exotic stimulant. Meanwhile, the silent watchers among the telepathic sponges introduced comedic telepathy waves, forging a new cultural phenomenon among species that had rarely laughed before. Merrick's, flipping through the old texts, discovered more references to that lost footnote about the Council's founding ideals. On a whim, he addressed the entire assembly one final time, simply reciting the corrected line. The galaxy was meant to be discovered together, not controlled. A hush followed, then a wild cheer. Even Glubnarth, though unconvinced, couldn't deny the wave of positivity. Later, some said they saw him slip away from the crowd, munching on a grilled item with a reflective, complicated expression. By the close of the summit, no official treaties had been signed. No war alliances or grand trade pacts had been hammered out. Instead, a new sense of camaraderie filled the void once occupied by formality. The humans prepared to depart, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed. Many delegates asked them to stay a while longer to help set up some sort of interstellar food expo. Derek promised he would return with more Earth delicacies. Baina insisted she had only shared a fraction of her recipes, and that the galaxy had barely tasted the wonders of fusion cuisine. Uncle Rolf joked that he might turn the next summit into a cosmic karaoke night if they let him. Then, just before the humans boarded their rainbow-hued craft, they made sure to pass around stickers that said, "Hug me, I'm cosmic," which delegates promptly stuck to their robes or harnesses. Glubnarth could only watch in quiet exasperation as the humans zipped off, leaving behind a swirl of confetti and lingering music. Norg sighed, seeming both relieved and unsettled at the same time. "We expected them to fear us," he muttered, half to himself. Instead, they showed up laughing. Ambassador Veb placed a comforting tendril on Norg's shoulder. "Perhaps," Veb said softly, "that's the greatest shield of all. Laughter in the face of the unknown." Merrick's agreed with a simple nod, as if to say the entire galaxy had just taken a new, uncharted path, and maybe that was precisely what had been needed. The days following the summit saw a spontaneous wave of human-inspired celebrations across multiple systems. Certain delegates who once promoted stern policies found themselves explaining comedic videos to their own populations. Some planets even repurposed warships to host traveling carnivals. Others started building their own versions of plastic flamingos and inflatable chairs. The consistent thread was that the galaxy, once so concerned with hierarchical seriousness, now tested a bit of irreverence. Critically, no one claimed that Earth was perfect. There were plenty of voices cautioning that this was just a fleeting fad. Yet for all the doomsayers, the sense of wonder remained. And so, bit by bit, the Council accepted this shift. They recognized that behind the nonsensical memes and bizarre culinary experiments, humanity carried a spark that reminded the cosmos of its own potential to find joy in unpredictability. From Earth's side, media outlets kept fueling the hype. Derek found himself an accidental celebrity in interstellar circles, broadcasting cooking challenges and comedic sketches that thousands of newly curious aliens followed through experimental transmissions. Baina's YouTube channel soared to galactic stardom. She received mysterious spices from the far rim, which she combined into eccentric new dips that change color when exposed to different frequencies of cosmic waves. Uncle Rolf, ever the wandering minstrel, drifted from place to place giving spontaneous concerts, rumored to have visited a floating temple somewhere near the Pole-for-All system just to jam with local monks. Despite all the celebrations, life didn't become perfect or utopian overnight. There were still disputes among star systems, tensions over resource use, cultural misunderstandings. But it became noticeably harder to slip into war posturing when your counterpart was wearing a novelty t-shirt that said, "Don't nuke my moon, bro." People found themselves giggling at the seriousness of old arguments. Some council subcommittees disbanded because their entire function had been to measure threat levels, and now they realized they might need to adapt to measure levels of comedic synergy. The Universal Translator device even updated its software to detect humor, offering a new mode labeled sarcasm tolerance. In the final analysis, humanity didn't conquer or forcibly enlighten anyone. They simply arrived, handing out silly stickers, cooking questionable food, playing out-of-tune music, and encouraging everyone to drop their guard for a moment. They displayed a genuine inability or refusal to see the cosmos as a grim place demanding constant dread. Instead, they laughed at it, or with it, a response that shook the foundations of centuries-old institutions more than any gun or laser ever could. The record-keeping drones, once used to tracking stern parliamentary votes, ended up logging reams of comedic transcripts, cross-species karaoke set lists, and instructions on how to make smocked or s'mores, the universal version of a marshmallow sandwich. In the final hours of the summit, An entire dais had been converted into an open mic stage. Delegates from multiple civilizations took turns performing comedic routines, or at least their best attempts, aided by Earth's comedic sense. The telepathic sponges read the audience's mental feedback, calibrating timing for jokes that transcended language. Glubnarth, in an ironic twist, was coaxed into going on stage. He managed a stiff comedic monologue about the frustrations of dealing with an amorphous body when trying to wear formal robes. The crowd loved it. He huffed and stomped off afterward, but a faint glow within his gelatinous form hinted that maybe, just maybe, he too felt a spark of this baffling new camaraderie. The next day, the humans had already left the assembly moon. They departed quietly, with no big speech, no farewell parade. The council discovered a hamper brimming with Earth novelty items left behind. T-shirts, mugs declaring, "I survived the Galactic Summit." A cooler still half full of something labeled pineapple punch. On top of it all, they found a handwritten note in bright marker. "Thanks for letting us crash your party. If you need us, we'll come running, especially if snacks are involved. Love, Planet Earth." That note alone might have encapsulated the entire swirl of confusion and delight that had overtaken the council. They had expected fear, docility, or warlike ambition. Instead, they got unstoppable laughter. And for the first time in millennia, the galaxy realized it might be okay, maybe even necessary, to laugh at the unknown. Long after the summit ended, cosmic historians struggled to define precisely what had happened. Some framed it as a comedic revolution. Others saw it as a subtle infiltration of universal culture. A few insisted it was the moment the council rediscovered the long-lost meaning of cooperation. Records show that, ultimately, no official resolution condemned Earth, nor was Earth elevated to some prestigious status. It was simply welcomed with a half-bemused, half-eager acceptance. The galaxy's perspective on absurdity was forever changed. In the centuries to follow, new generations would grow up hearing tales of how the humans arrived with loud music and neon dips, turning the most revered gathering into a carnival of unexpected laughter. They'd hear of how entire governments, once obsessed with decorum, found themselves awkwardly swaying to a beat they neither understood nor could dismiss. In a small footnote of the official council documentation, one line stands out. Despite multiple predictions of chaos, the integration of Earth's comedic culture prompted a renaissance of relaxed policies and cross-species goodwill. That single sentence might sum up the broader outcome. It turned out the threat wasn't the humans' technology or cunning strategy. It was their fundamental refusal to see cosmic existence as purely grim. And as the final aftershock of the summit, many species realized that by embracing humor, they also embraced curiosity and tolerance. The abiding memory of that event, as recorded by countless participants, can be summed up in a single phrase. The council expected human fear, but humans showed up laughing, and the galaxy laughed right along with them.